This lesson is about triads. We could say this is about major and minor chords, how they're built. We could say this is about the CAGED method, how every kind of open chord becomes a movable chord. And that's when you get these little groups of threes, which are the notes that make up the chord. You can start to locate chord tones when you see your chord changes happening. So let's take a look at this C chord here, 2-0-1-0. Now to make that a movable chord, we need to take every one of these notes up one. So we have to kind of bar down here now to get that little shape. So this is a C. So if I went up 2 frets, that's a D. 2 more, I got an E. Then I have an F. If I go 1 more, 2 more gets me a G, and so on. And so you see these little, you can look at that little shape down there. In this case, it looks like the little D shape that we know, but it started out as an open 1 open, and then it turned into that D shape as it moved up. And as we know, that's the D right there. So we could also look at this 2 open 1 and make that a 3 1 2, and make that a movable triad to get all the different chords. Okay, so that was the C from the CAGED thing they talk about. Here's the A chord. So this is where we could have the 3 big strings just with 1 finger. That's a B chord, C chord, D chord, E chord, F chord, etc. We could also look at the bottom of this, these other 3. 2 2 open becomes 3 3 1 4 4 2. So this is an A. I'll go up 2 frets for a B, C, D, E, F. Okay, so we have the C and how it moves. And like I say, you can just take the 3 on the big end or the 3 on the small end and move that as its own shape as well. Okay, then we had the A. A has that kind of 1 finger thing. And you try to get that angle on that so you don't hear the bottom string, because we wouldn't have that same fret on the bottom string. Now the lower part of this is the 2 2 open, and that becomes this type of a shape. Okay, let's move on to the G. So the G is like the A with those big strings, where that could just be a movable thing there. But we also have that extra pinky that's 3 away from those opens. So that becomes like this, like 2 2 2 and 5 would be an A chord. 4s with 7, B chord. 5s with 8, C chord, D chord, etc. Okay, that's the G. Then we go to the E. E turns into like the F, which becomes this major bar chord shape. So here we have a G, 5 4 3 3. A is 7 6 5 5. B is 9 8 7 7. So we could look at just these 3 right here. That's a movable triad that would get you all the necessary notes to play a chord. You don't always have to have all the strings playing to play a chord. You need the 3 notes that are in that chord. So these are the 3 notes in a major chord. You could also look at this as like this 6 5 5 shape here. We go back to that 1 open open from the E chord. That's enough of a triad to play that chord as well. Any one of these chords. That's a G, there's an A, B, C. Okay, and then the last one is the D chord. We have this movable shape here. So that's D. Now if I wanted to move the whole thing, I would have to move that bass note with our little D top. So that's where we get into this different way of playing it, where you save your first finger out of it, make that D with these other fingers. Okay, so this part right here, that's just a power chord in this case. But that's still a movable chord shape. So that's an A right there, that's a G, that's an F. It's just not an F major because it needs that. See how that's the happy note in there? So this end would give you like a full major chord. Let's look at like the minor chords, like so D minor. Let's look at that, open 2 3 1. That becomes 1 3 4 2. There's the E minor, F minor. So once again, this lower end is just a power chord. It doesn't have the deciding minor note. But if you took that little shape by itself, you can make that a movable shape. D minor, E minor, F minor, G minor, A minor, etc. And let's look at the E minor shape. That becomes this one. So that's a G minor, here's an A minor, B minor, C minor. So in this case, the biggest three notes are the three that you need to make a full chord. And then you also have these ones, this little bar down here. There's a G minor, A minor, B minor, C minor. So sometimes if you're having trouble figuring out, you got a weird chord like an A flat or something, and you're trying to figure out, where can I play this? Well, look at like your A in that case. So A could also be like this. If we moved all that down one fret, there's an A flat right there. Or we have this A shape. If we move that all down one, there's an A flat. We could also have an A flat or an A like this. Take that down one, there's another A flat. So any one of these shapes can help you find all the chords you might be looking for. Okay, let's say we're looking at an A minor now. 2, 2, 1 open, that becomes 3, 3, 2, 1. So that's a A sharp minor or B flat minor. Here's a B minor, probably seen that in some songs. C minor, D minor, E minor, F minor, and these three notes up here, that's all you need to make a minor chord. So a D minor chord would be right there, 7, 6, 5. A C minor chord, 5, 4, 3. Of course, we could do the bigger ones, and that also gives us the three notes that we need. 5, 5, and 4, that's also part of a C minor. So you can do interesting things like do a little finger picking with these. But what if I needed a E minor and I wanted that same shape? I'll come all the way up here. And how I got there was A, B, C, D, E minor. Now if I had this E minor and I wanted like a B minor, I'm gonna come way up here. Because that was E minor, F minor, G minor, A minor, B minor. Okay, so let's say we look at the E major chord. What if we want an A major? E, F, G, A. See how quick that can be? And just remember your B to C and your E to F, those are the ones that are only one fret when you're trying to find notes. Here's a little riff from Stairway to Heaven where they use a minor chord to a major, to a major, to a major. Okay, so it's really good to know all your different movable chords. Say if I wanted a D flat major, well, I might go, here's a D, or here's a D. So D flat, move them all down one. So the more chords you know, the more places. Here's the E chord. What if I wanted an E minor? Well, I got to change my shape from this thing to that thing. Okay, so the next chord lesson I do, we'll get into dominant sevens, major sevens, minor sevens to add to the majors and minors. Thanks a lot for watching, y'all. Peace.